Hey everybody, ready for another deep dive? Today we're taking a look at Psalms 111 through 118.
Oh, yeah.
And these Psalms, I'm telling you, they are packed with just like pure joy and hope,
Absolutely.
all centered around God's enduring love, which, I think we can all use a little bit of that these days.
Mm.
And we're going to be working with this document called Psalms 111, 118, Praise, Thanksgiving, and God's Enduring Love.pdf.
That's right. Yeah, these Psalms are so rich, and I think we're going to see a lot of themes about praise and thanksgiving and trust and how those all kind of are woven together with that idea of God's enduring love.
So Psalm 111, it goes right out the gate, no messing around. Praise the Lord with my whole heart.
Wow.
Right. The psalmist is not holding back.
Yeah, there's like an intensity to it.
Yeah.
It's like, pay attention, this is important. And it kind of sets the tone for everything that follows. And then, combines that intensity of that wholehearted praise with the way that it talks about God's works being honorable and glorious. I think it makes you take a step back and be like, okay, what kind of God are we dealing with here?
That's such a good point. It's like, it's not just about seeing the words. It's about really having that deep, soul level understanding of God's goodness. But how do you think, that's great, but how do you think reflecting on God's goodness actually helps us, practically stay grateful, even when, life is throwing curveballs?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's like building a reservoir.
Mm.
When you consistently focus on the good, the things to be thankful for, it starts to change the way you see things.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you ignore the hard things,
Right.
but it gives you something to stand on when things are shaky.
Okay. Yeah, like a foundation.
Yeah.
And speaking of foundations, verse 10 just drops this, wisdom bomb on us, right?
Ah.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And I know there are a lot of different interpretations of that verse.
Oh, yeah.
But I always come back to that idea that, having that healthy respect for God, that's what leads to a life of purpose. What do you think?
Yeah, and it's interesting how that just flows right into Psalm 112, which starts talking about all the blessings that are poured out on those who fear the Lord.
Right.
It's like, here's what happens when you build your life on that foundation of reverence.
Totally. But verse 7, he shall not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is fixed, trusting in the Lord. Okay, sure, but we live in a world where it's kind of natural to feel anxious.
Yeah.
So how do we kind of reconcile that verse with our real world anxieties?
Right. And I think it's not saying that fear doesn't exist or that you should pretend that you're not anxious, but it's about where you put your ultimate trust. If you think about building a house on sand versus solid rock. Yeah.
One is going to get swept away and one's going to withstand the storms. And I think this verse is saying, look, build your sense of security on something that's deeper and more permanent than just the shifting sands of circumstance.
That's such a great analogy.
Thanks.
And then in verse 9, we see this connection between feeling God and then being like, ridiculously generous. He is dispersed. He is given to the poor. His righteousness endures forever. It's like this outward expression of an inward change,
Yeah, it's not about just feeling good about yourself.
Right.
It's actually reflecting God's character.
Yes.
In a tangible way. And I'm curious, have you ever experienced that, that link between acknowledging something bigger than yourself and then feeling moved to help others?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think it's almost a shifting of your priorities,
Totally.
And that actually takes us right into Psalm 113, where the focus here shifts to God's care for humanity.
It really does.
Because it's all about that. And it's really beautiful the way that it, highlights God's compassion, that he's actually involved in the lives of people who maybe feel like they're overlooked or forgotten. And it's like this reminder that no one is beyond God's reach.
Yeah. And verse 7 has got to be one of the most uplifting verses in this whole set.
Yeah.
He raises the poor out of the dust.
Wow. Yeah.
Talk about an image of hope.
It really is okay, so God sees us even in our lowest moments. He has the power to lift us up.
Yeah.
Okay, now get ready. Because Psalm 114 is pure poetry.
Oh.
It's so powerful, and it's all about God delivering Israel,
Tremble thou earth at the presence of the Lord. Verse 7, you can almost feel the ground shaking.
Right.
It's so vivid, that imagery of God's power.
It's such a good reminder that the God that we're talking about here is not this distant passive figure.
Right.
He is active and involved in the world and capable of incredible displays of power.
And then it just flows right into Psalm 115, which, man, it takes such a strong stance against idol worship.
Yes.
And it draws such a stark contrast. You have lifeless idols versus the living God,
Right.
Verse 3 just says, but our God is in the heavens. He has done whatsoever he is pleased. And it's like, okay, well then where does your trust lie?
Where does it lie?
Like, for real,
It's a great question. Are we putting our trust in things that can ultimately let us down?
Yeah.
Or are we putting it in the one who made everything? And then, Psalm 116 takes kind of a personal turn.
Yeah, that's more personal.
Expressing deep gratitude and devotion.
I love the Lord because he has heard my voice and my supplications. Verse 1, it always gets me because it's that feeling of like being heard and seen by God, especially, when you're going through a rough time.
Absolutely. And what I love is, look what comes next. Verse 2. Because he has inclined his ear to me, therefore I will call upon him as long as I live.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's like this beautiful cycle. It's like the more we experience God, the more we want to seek him.
It's not about just like saying the right words. It's about having that posture of openness and dependence on God.
And that makes me think about times where I felt really distant from God, or it felt like he wasn't hearing me. And it's like, maybe it was my own heart posture,
That's a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in just the day-to-day, the busyness.
Totally.
And lose track of that connection.
And now we got to shift gears and talk about Psalm 118, which, this psalm is pure celebration from beginning to end, We talked about verse 24. This is the day which the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. But I think we need to explore the context a little more.
I agree. Yeah.
What do you think?
So if you look at the verses leading up to 24, there's this sense that the psalmist has been through it,
Yeah.
There's this talk about enemies being surrounded.
Right. Attacked. But then there's this shift and it's like, victory.
Yeah.
We made it.
It's not just rejoicing for no reason. It's like rejoicing because you made it through something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that makes the celebration even more, profound.
Yeah.
It's like rooted in gratitude for God's deliverance.
Yes. Yes. His faithfulness.
Yes.
That is such a powerful message for us, especially when we're going through our own struggles.
Absolutely.
It's like we can choose joy, you know, even when things are difficult, because we know that God's with us.
And that joy is meant to be shared, right?
Yeah.
Remember Psalm 117, the shortest chapter? Praise the Lord, all you nations.
Oh, yeah. That one's a good one.
It's amazing. It's like spread the joy of knowing God to everyone you meet.
Not just for us.
Exactly. And that's a big idea, God's love isn't limited.
Yes.
It's for everyone.
Yeah, everyone. From every background, every culture, every walk of life.
It's for everybody.
It's a reminder that we shouldn't keep our faith hidden, It's meant to be shared.
It's meant to be shared.
With the world.
Absolutely. And speaking of light, let's go back to Psalm 112 for a sec. There's a phrase in verse 4 that I love. Unto the upright there arises light in the darkness.
Oh, I love that one.
It's so good.
It's like this promise that even when things are dark and confusing, God's presence brings like illumination and guidance.
It's such a powerful image of hope.
Yes.
And it really connects back to that theme of trust that we keep seeing in these songs. It's like, even when we can't see the way forward, we can trust that God is there. He's leading us through.
I always love that analogy of like having a flashlight.
Oh, yeah.
In the middle of the night. It might not light up the whole path.
Right.
But you can see enough to take the next step.
That's such a good analogy, yeah. And it's a reminder that, we don't have to have all the answers.
Right. Yeah.
Or figure everything out on our own.
Yeah, we can just trust God to guide us.
Absolutely.
One step at a time.
One step at a time.
That's so freeing to remember.
Yeah.
So we've talked about generosity, gratitude, trust, light shining in darkness. What other treasures can we unearth from these psalms?
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that even in these celebratory psalms, there is this thread of lament.
Okay.
For example, in Psalm 116, the psalmist talks about being brought low and experiencing the sorrows of death.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're right. It's a reminder that even when we're experiencing joy, life is still hard, Yeah. There's still going to be sorrow and struggle.
It's real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what's beautiful about it is that these psalms don't shy away from those emotions.
Yes, they acknowledge them.
They acknowledge the pain, the suffering.
Yeah.
But they also point us back to God.
Yes.
As the source of comfort and hope.
It's like they're giving us permission to be honest with God.
Yeah.
About everything.
About everything. You don't have to pretend to have it all together.
Right.
You can come to him with all of your brokenness, all your fears, all your doubts, and know that he's going to meet you with love and compassion.
Yeah, I love that. It's like these Psalms are saying, hey, life's messy, but God's bigger than the mess.
Yeah, exact.
And it brings us right back to that main theme.
Yes.
God's enduring love, you know.
Right.
No matter what we face, no matter how we're feeling, God's love remains.
It does.
That's something to celebrate, I think.
It is. It really is. And it's something that can carry us through the highs and lows.
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Just barely.
We got to get ready for part 2.
Yes.
Because I have a feeling there's a lot more good stuff coming.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, well, stay tuned for part 2 of this deep dive, everybody.
We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody.
All right, I'm ready to keep going. There's just so much here.
I know, right?
It feels like we could spend like hours on every single verse.
I know.
Where do we want to go next?
Let's go back to Psalm 112 for a sec. We talked about generosity, but there's this interesting connection between verses 4 and 9 that I want to kind of unpack a little bit.
Okay, remind me what those say again.
So verse 4 describes the righteous person as being like gracious and full of compassion.
Okay.
And then verse 9, as you mentioned, talks about their generosity. He has dispersed, he has given to the poor, his righteousness endures forever.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see where you're going with this. It's like the inner quality of compassion naturally leads to those outward actions of generosity.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's such a powerful, I think, illustration of how our inner world shapes what we do. It's not about just like outward appearances,
Right.
empty rituals. It's about a heart that's been like transformed by God's love.
Yeah, it makes you think about like your own motivations for giving,
Yeah.
Like what's really behind those actions.
What's the driving force?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
And speaking of the heart, let's go back to Psalm 116 for a minute. Remember verse 1, I love the Lord because he has heard my voice and my supplications.
Oh, yeah, that one's good.
So like raw, honest gratitude.
Yeah.
Like the psalmist is just pouring out their heart.
But look at what comes next, verse 2. Because he has inclined his ear to me, therefore I will call upon him as long as I live.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It's like this beautiful back and forth.
Right, it's a cycle.
It's like this amazing feedback loop. The more you experience God's presence and that he hears you, the more you want to seek him.
Yeah, it's not just about like saying the words, it's about like the posture of your heart. Like,
exactly.
That makes me think about all those times when I felt distant from God.
Yeah.
Like maybe he wasn't hearing me or whatever. And it's like maybe it was just my own heart,
That's a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in life and lose that connection.
All right, let's shift gears again and talk about Psalm 118. We highlighted verse 24. This is the day which the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. But I think it's helpful to like look at the verses before that.
I agree.
Like what's the context?
Yeah, if you look at the verses leading up to it, like I said, it seems like the psalmist has been through some stuff.
Yeah.
Talk about enemies, surrounded, attacked, and then it's like, boom, this shift.
Right, victory.
Yeah.
You made it through.
We made it.
So it's not just rejoicing like out of nowhere.
No.
It's rejoicing because you like went through something hard.
It's like we came out on the other side.
And that makes the celebration so much more powerful.
Oh, for sure. It's like it's rooted in gratitude for God's deliverance.
Yeah, for his faithfulness.
Yes, his faithfulness.
Man, that is such a powerful message, especially for like, when we are in the middle of our own struggles.
It is.
It's a reminder that we can still choose joy even when things are rough.
Yeah, because you know that he's with you.
He's there.
He's there.
And that joy, it's not meant to be kept to ourselves, right?
No, you remember Psalm 117, the shortest chapter?
Yeah.
It's like, praise the Lord, all you nations, spread that joy,
It's not just for us.
It's for everyone. It's this idea that God's love is not limited. It's for everybody.
For everyone from all walks of life, all backgrounds.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It's for everybody.
And it reminds me that, our faith isn't something to be hidden.
Right.
It's meant to be shared.
Meant to be shared.
It's meant to be a light.
Absolutely. And speaking of light, let's go back to Psalm 112 again.
Okay.
There's a part in verse 4 that I just love. Unto the upright there arises light in the darkness.
Oh, I love that one.
It's so good.
It's like a promise
Yeah.
that even when things are dark and like you can't figure it out, God's presence brings light and guidance.
Such a powerful image of hope, and it connects back to that theme of trust that we keep seeing.
Yeah.
Like even when we can't see the way forward, we can trust that he's there. He's leading us through
Yeah. I love the analogy of having a flashlight in the dark,
Oh, yeah.
It might not light up the whole path, but you can see enough to take that next step.
That's such a good analogy. It's like you don't have to have all the answers.
Right. You don't have to figure it all out.
Just take the next step.
Just trust him.
One step at a time.
It's so freeing to remember that.
It is.
All right. So we've talked about generosity, gratitude, trust, light shining in the darkness. What other treasures can we dig up from these Psalms?
Well, I think it's important to point out that even in these Psalms that are so celebratory, there is this undercurrent of lament.
Okay.
Like, for example, in Psalm 116, the psalmist talks about being brought low, experiencing the sorrows of death.
That's interesting. It's true. Even when we're experiencing joy, life can still be hard.
Yeah.
There will still be times of sorrow and struggle.
It's real.
It's real.
And what I love about these Psalms is that they don't shy away from that.
Yes, they acknowledge it.
They acknowledge the pain and the suffering. But they also point us back to God as the source of hope and comfort.
It's like they're giving us permission to be honest with God.
Yes, exactly.
About all of it.
About everything.
Not just the good stuff.
Yeah, you don't have to pretend you have it all together.
Yeah.
You can come to him broken, afraid, doubtful, and know that he's going to meet you with love and compassion.
Man, that's good. It's like they're saying, hey, life's messy.
Yeah.
But God is bigger than the mess.
Exactly. And that brings us back to, like you said, that main theme.
Yeah.
God's enduring love.
No matter what we face, no matter how we're feeling, God's love is still there. It's constant. And that's something to celebrate.
It is something to celebrate.
Yeah.
And it's something that can carry us through all of it, the highs and lows.
Yes, all of it.
All of it.
Man, I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of these Psalms.
I know, me too.
We got to keep going.
Part 3. Here we come.
Get ready for part 3 of this deep dive, everybody. We're going to keep uncovering more good stuff. Welcome back, everybody, for the final part of our deep dive into Psalms 111 through 118.
I know. It's been a really cool journey, just kind of like uncovering all these layers.
Yeah. I feel like every time we dig into another verse, it's like, oh, there's more there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
getting a deeper understanding of not just God, but our place in all of this,
That's what's so cool about the Psalms. They just speak to us,
Yeah.
No matter what time period you're in, no matter what culture you're in.
It's timeless.
There's just this timeless wisdom for life,
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of wisdom, I keep thinking about Psalm 111, verse 10, that one that says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Oh, that's a classic. I feel like people have debated that one forever.
Yeah. What do you think about that verse?
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
I know there's so much to unpack there.
What is it about that verse that sticks out to you?
It's the word beginning for me. It's like that's the starting point.
Right.
Like if you don't have that reverence for something bigger than yourself, you can't even begin to understand real wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just about being smart, right? It's not about knowing a lot of stuff. It's about aligning yourself with God.
Yes.
And his will and his perspective, and realizing we only see a tiny piece of the puzzle,
It's humbling.
Yes.
But it's also really freeing in a way.
It is.
It's like, oh, okay, I don't have to have it all figured out.
Exactly.
And that trust, we see that all through these Psalms, like Psalm 112, talks about the righteous person. They have a good understanding, and they're not afraid of evil tidings.
Right. It's like they have this inner peace that comes from knowing that God's got them,
Their world could be falling apart around them.
Yeah.
But they have that anchor,
They're rooted in something solid.
Speaking of things falling apart, I mean, Psalm 114, it paints this crazy picture, right? Tremble, thou earth, at the presence of the Lord. What power,
It's a good reminder that we serve a God who is bigger than anything we're going to face.
Yes.
He can calm the seas.
Yeah.
He can still the storms.
He brings order to the chaos.
Yes.
It's kind of scary and comforting all at the same time.
Yeah, it is.
And I think it leads us back to that question that these Psalms keep asking us, where are you putting your trust?
Where are you putting it?
Are you trusting yourself?
Right.
Your own strength, your own resources?
Well, or are you leaning on the one who made it all?
Yeah, it's a choice we make every day.
It is.
We have to choose, are we going to trust God?
Are you going to trust him?
Or are we going to try to do it all on our own?
Yeah, it's like choose trust over fear,
Yes.
hope over despair.
And love over everything.
Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's his love that sustains us.
It gives us strength. It guides us. It carries us.
It does.
And that's what we see in these songs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like this celebration of God's love.
It's like a symphony
It's
of praise.